Right, so today we are going to discuss the second part of our object-oriented programming session. So last time we discussed the basics. So today we are going to discuss the advanced concepts and hopefully finish it. Okay, so this is very important session. As I told you, object-oriented programming is the way that we do programming these days. Okay, so we did the basics last time. So we'll do a very quick uh, recap of what you did last session, and we will quickly move on to the today's session. Okay, right. Right. So in the last session, we discussed that we can learn object orientation in three layers. Right, in three layers. That is the object oriented basics, the concepts, right, and the advanced things. So we have covered the basics, right? So under basics we discuss what is object, and of course what is class, then what is mean by messaging, and what can be inside a class. Okay, what can be inside the class. So today we are going to discuss the concepts, that is we are going to discuss inheritance of, let's start with abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. So we are going to cover these four today. Okay, right. So if anyone can't log in, just send a small message to the WhatsApp groups, because some of you guys I couldn't send the invitation because of some errors. Okay, so those people I have to admit that is why I ask you to log in early. Okay, otherwise I will miss. Okay, so let's start from the what we stopped last time. We discussed that so we can think of object oriented system as set of uh, objects communicate and collaborate by passing messages. So I'm keep on repeating this because that is the most important thing to understand. Okay, right. So we can uh, communicate. The objects can communicate and collaborate to get something done, or the system will function like that. So the key concepts we discuss is a concept called object, and under object we discuss that object can have attributes and behaviors. Okay, so those are the two things that we are interested. Then object can invoke behaviors or service of another object. So we call them uh, messaging, right? Messaging. So that ability is there. So that is how we have designed, or the object-oriented programming languages are created. Also, we can use that feature. Okay. Uh, then of course we discuss what is the structure of a class. So we discuss the difference between object and class. So object is a real thing that is interacting in the environment, whereas class is, or class models set of related objects. Okay, for example, for all the accounts we will be modeling a account class. For all the payments we will be modeling a payment class, right? Then we discuss what are the things that we model inside a class, right? So we identify five things, right? So when it comes to class, we identify five things. We discussed that those attributes can be mapped into either instance variables or class variables, right? Then uh, the behaviors will be mapped to either instance methods or class methods. Then we discuss the fifth element, that is the constructors, right? Constructors. So we discuss all five uh, elements that can be available in a class. So basically we have to model our objects to those five elements, right? Attributes will be mapping to instance variables or class variables. Behaviors will be mapping to uh, instance method of class methods. Okay, so that is how it works. Then we have the fifth element, the constructor, which is called when object is created, right? So anyway, I have uploaded the video for this particular session to the YouTube. If you didn't attend that, you better go through that. Okay, right? So therefore I'm not going to discuss it again. Okay. Is there anyone who can't hear? Can you all hear? Can someone respond? Can you all hear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So let's move on to today's lesson. So we are going to discuss the object-oriented concepts today. So the concepts we are going to discuss are. So anyway, let's straight away go into the PDF. So the concepts that we are going to discuss today are abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance, and polymorphism. So we are going to discuss in this order because this is the natural order of uh, understanding those four concepts. Once you understand those four concepts, you will be able to start developing object-oriented code. Okay, so that is what we are going to uh, plan today, right? Right. So let's take one by one. The first concept is called abstraction, right? So the first concept is called abstraction. Abstraction means, right? So we take the definition: filtering or taking the essential or relevant and ignoring the irrelevant. So that is called abstraction, right? So when we are modeling something, so this is related to something called model, right? So which you do frequently as engineers, right? So as engineers, we always model things, part of the designing process, right? So that is why if you have seen civil engineering students, mechanical engineering students, they are taking that the big draft that so බම්බුවක්ක දාගෙන යනවා යන්නේ මොනවාද ඒවයි තියෙන්නේ designs නේ it can be a design of a machine element, or it can be the design of a building, right? So likewise, so we heavily do modeling when it comes to engineering, and of course in the science also, right? So what we do is, when we design or when we model something, okay, so someone's mic is on, right? So when we model something, what we do is we use the concept called abstraction, right? So I have given you so many examples because these are very, very important, right? If you want to be a software engineer, you must have that mindset of an engineer. What engineers do, right? So they are one of the top tasks is designing, because we are building complex systems. So you can't just start coding without proper design. So the designing, or the key part of designing is modeling. So when we say model something, basically we use the concept called abstraction, right? So abstraction, so we take the essential and ignore the irrelevance, right? So you can see here, it is we are taking the essential related to the logic, right? Here it's a circuit diagram. So there can be so many things when it comes to circuit diagrams, so many physical things, etc. But we take the concept and we just model that, right? Same thing we have to do when it comes to software development also. For example, you may have seen some diagrams, data flow diagrams, right? So last time also we discussed we can have the class diagrams, right? Use case diagrams. So all those things are uh, the models. So when we model something, we are using the concept called abstraction, right? So we model the what is really essential to the system, right? Or we just take one of the aspects to understand that particular aspect, right? So that is why we have different diagrams also. So for example, if you are only interested about the data, we draw the diagram. We want to understand how the uh, classes are related, we can draw a class diagram. If we want to see how the messages are passing in the object oriented system, we will be drawing a sequence diagram or collaboration diagram. So likewise, we by modeling, we can look at different aspects separately, because this is complex things we can't understand, or if you try to understand everything in one model, it's not going to work, because in a complex system, right? So in that case, what we do is the concept called abstraction, right? So take the essential or relevant thing that we are interested at this particular moment, or what we are looking at it, right? So in which angle we are looking at it, right? So this is very important. A lot of students don't pay attention to these things. So if someone asks what is object oriented, 99% of the student will say inheritance, inheritance, inheritance. So their life is inheritance only. But there are four concepts, right? So inheritance is just one of it, right? So first understand these things, then only you will be able to do some modeling, do some designing, right? So okay, so therefore take these things very serious, right? So now we have understood what is mean by abstraction, right? So it's a concept, right? So when we model something, we have to take the essential and we have to forget about the non-essential. Then only we will be able to concentrate on our solution, right? Tackle that complexity, right? So now we are moving to the second concept. So you can see first one is just a concept, right? So that you have to think. If you want to be a software developer, you have to think like an engineer, right? Use these concepts, right? And again, this is not simple thing, right? So someone will say, okay, that is not a big deal. Yes, this is a very very big deal. So that is why everyone can't be engineer, everyone can't be a, cannot develop softwares, right? So this abstraction is a sort of a mindset that a developed mind will have, right? Developed mind will have. Not everyone will be having it. Of course, you can develop it if you have the talent, right? So in any field, not only in engineering, the sort of a highest layer is the abstraction layer, right? So any field, right? So I will just give you example. For example, if you take say art, right? Art. Let's say one of the branch of that music, right? Right, music. So if I ask who is the greatest musician in Sri Lanka, so what can be the answer? Can someone tell me for your mind who is the greatest musician in Sri Lanka? Can someone respond to that for your mind? Of course, different people will have different answers. Can someone respond? So I'm just looking at the chat. Someone like Kemadasa, right? So Kemadasa master. So why? His music is more abstract than අපි කියන මල් සින්දු කියලා තියෙන private bus වල හෙන්නේ. So those are not abstract. කෙලින්ම කතන්දරේ කියන්නේ, but the greatest people, they know how to abstract the things and present, right? So those are the greatest things, right? So those are the advanced things, right? So same thing you have to do if you want to be a software engineer. Make sure that you have that abstract mindset, right? Abstract mindset. So again, I hope you have heard this thing. So something like this: small mind, right? The great mind discuss ideas, average mind discuss events, small mind discuss people, right? So you can see the great mind discuss ideas. Ideas means what? Abstraction. Okay, abstraction. So you must have that. So this is very important. A lot of people don't pay attention to these things, so they just start learning about inheritance. Okay, okay, right. So let's move on to the second concepts now. So think about abstraction. Okay. So second concept is called encapsulation. So encapsulation means when we model something, we want to take those things or enclose those into structures. So we are keep on talking about modeling, right? Because you have the system analysis and design, software engineering, right? So we are going to discuss some modeling serious way. Right? Designing is all about modeling, okay? Not all about modeling. The major part of the designing is modeling, right? So encapsulation means you enclose concepts into structures, right? We enclose concepts into structures. So how does this word came? Encapsulation, right? Capsulation, encapsulation. So you know what is meant by capsule, right? Something like this. So all the medicine is inside this. So it is encapsulated. So we call it capsule, right? Capsule. So same thing when we want to model something, right? When we want to model a concept or idea, remember uh, we discussed about abstraction. when we want to model something, because it's a concept, it's an idea, sometimes it's very difficult to present it. So how to present it to someone else as your design, we use the concept called encapsulation. So encapsulation means we use structures to model things, right? We use structures to model things, right? For example, we discussed last time about the concept called class. So what, how did we model it? We use something like this, right? So something like this, and we call it a class. Say this is a student, and then we can keep modeling the name, right, age or whatever attributes, then some behaviors, right? So we can model it. Then when it comes to code, so that is designing. When it comes to coding, you can just say class, right, student, then you can see there are curly brackets. So that is structure, that is encapsulation. Then when we are writing methods also, there will be curly brackets. Now you can see these are the we are encapsulating, right? We are encapsulating, we are put those concepts into structures, right? So that is called encapsulation, right? Encapsulation. So when we design something, right, when we design something, we want to put it into some structures, right? So you can see all these artifacts have some sort of encapsulation, right? Some sort of encapsulation. So that idea is called uh, encapsulation. Okay. So then there is a special case of encapsulation. For the special case of the idea of encapsulation, uh, so the most important thing is understand what is the encapsulation, right? So the next thing is understanding there's a special form or strong form of encapsulation called data hiding or information hiding, right? So that is just a special case where when we model or in software development in object oriented concepts, we prefer, now remember, every object has data and or the attributes and behaviors, right? Attributes and behaviors, or data and behaviors, because attributes will be data. So what we like to do is, now remember, objects can access other objects, so they can send messages, they can send messages to get something done. So basically object can do two things, right? So objects can, yes, they can call the behavior of other object, and of course object can access the attributes or data of the other objects as well, right? So you can see, though we are, when we say messaging, we mention that it is calling other objects behavior, but objects have another uh, capability, that is objects can access the attributes of the other objects as well, right? So what this data hiding is telling is, don't expose that behavior, restrict that, make sure that only you allow calling the behaviors, do not allow objects to access the other objects data or attributes. So that is why we never talk about something called accessing data, we just talk about messaging. Whenever we say message, we call in the behavior, we never call access the data, right? Because accessing the data, allowing accessing data of one object to another object is not very good thing, right? So not very good thing. It has some bad effects, right? Bad consequences when it comes to security and other things. Therefore we want to restrict that. So that restricting of this object's ability to access another object's data is called data hiding, right? So that is very important. So how to do that, right? How to do that, we will discuss that later, how to do that. Basically what we do is, we make all your data or the classes data private, right? We make the data private, then allow only call the behaviors. Of course the behaviors of the class can access the data, thereby you will get the access to the data indirectly, but not directly through the accessing the data, right? So that is why in object oriented systems we just draw something called message mean invoking other objects behavior, right? So we don't show something like accessing data, nothing, because we want to restrict that. Okay. So that is very important thing. By default, yes, both are possible, but when we are programming, we want to restrict that, okay. Now the question might be, if you are really thinking, right, actively thinking, so what is the question that you must ask? So again I will repeat that sentence. Object oriented programming languages facilitate object to call behavior of another object or access data of another object, right? So it facilitate these two: access the behavior of another object or call the behavior of another object, access the data of another object. So that is facilitated by object oriented programming. But what the data hiding concept says, don't do this, don't do this, only do this. Then someone will ask, so what is the question that you must ask? Can someone ask that question? I like to hear that question. Anyone? Right, so if you are really thinking, the question you must ask is, if if the concept says don't do this, right, why they have facilitated, right, why they have facilitated, so they have facilitated two things and then you are telling that don't do this. So the reason is, in very rare cases, right, in case we need to do this for a very special reason, they have facilitated. But as a programming practice, we have to make sure we don't use that very often. Okay, so that is why they have facilitated. There can be very rare situations it has to be done, but make sure you don't use it without any real reason. Okay, right. So that is called data hiding. Okay, so that's a special case of encapsulation, very strong form of encapsulation. Okay, right. So then, so remember, now we have discussed, so this is how these are related. We discuss abstraction, then we discuss encapsulation, then we discuss a strong form of encapsulation called data hiding, right? Data hiding. Now we are going to discuss another special case of data hiding called Java beans. Right? Java beans. So that is how the concepts are related. Abstraction, encapsulation. Of course, we will be discussing inheritance and polymorphism. A special case of encapsulation is called data hiding, where we restrict the data part and only expose the behaviors. Then there's a special case of data hiding, or a special way of doing that data hiding. We call it in Java, Java beans. Okay, Java beans. Right. So what we do in Java beans is, of course, we have to, in data hiding, we have to make sure that all your data is private, and those data is exposed through the public behaviors. Right. So we'll move on to some coding very quickly. So we'll be using the IntelliJ because we have to do a lot of coding today. So just I'm waiting for the IntelliJ to open. Right, I think it has one. Yes. So let's create a class. Right? So let's create a class, new Java class. So I will call it employee. Right, employee. Right, so this is a class. Then I will add some attributes, right? So let's say string name. I will add another one, double salary, right? And also I will be adding one more property, just to demonstrate a concept, a boolean, right? So let's say uh, married or not, married. So m, right? So now I am going to create another class. So let's have some behaviors also. Let's say void attend. attend. So I will just put up a s out, employee attended. Anyway, we discussing some event handling later on the syllabus. So this assume that this is one of the event that we are interested about the employee. Of course, if you have electronic finger scanning system, the system will detect this, right? We'll have another one, leave, employee left. Right, now let's have a test class for this new Java class. Let's call it employee test, and we will have the main method there, csvm. I'm going to create an employee object. So we discussed those things last time. Employee, let's say e1 equal new employee. Right, now this is another class. Now remember, we have the employee test class, right? Employee test class, right? So employee test class, or object of employee test class, when we run this, it has created a employee object. Why? It want to send some messages and get something done, right? Get something done. Of course, this object will be created when we run, right? When the main method is running, when this is run executed, employee test object will be created. When this line is executed, in that object's behavior called main, an employee object will also be created, right? So actually there is no message passing. uh, when the programs runs up to this line, uh, these two objects are created now, right? Those two objects are created. So look at those things, right? So don't just blindly code, think about those things. Okay, right. Now let's say I want to send a message to the this particular object saying, okay, you have shown your attend behavior. In system also we want to register that, right? So we can do something like e1 dot uh, attend, e1 dot attend. Then of course there can be some other objects also, like employee 2, right? So another one person scan their fingerprints. Now we have to get another object. Of course, once we are done with this, we can garbage, it will be garbage collected, right? So let's say e2 dot attend, right? So that is another object, another employee object. For that, for this one you send a message, for this one you send a message. Now you can see how the message passing happens, right? Now what? No, this is fine. This is all about object-oriented programming. But the bad thing is, as a programmer, you can do something like this. For example, you can do e1 dot say salary equal something like this. So this is what. So this is not message passing. You are accessing the your this object is setting value of a property of this particular object. So that is what data hiding is asking you not to do, right? So data hiding means what? You must hide your data to some other object, right? Some other object. Now it is not hidden, right? So you can see this employee test object can access the data of employee object. So that is what we want to restrict. Now this is still employee class is not data hidden, right? So what we want to do is we want to make them private, right? Because we want to adhere to our object oriented concepts. Now of course this object can send messages, but now this object can't access the data, right? Access the data. You can see all of a sudden everywhere it is red. This is red. You are not supposed to do that. You are not supposed to do that. So now I have to comment this. So I am not supposed to do this. So that is all about data hiding, right? So I am not just explaining you the throwing you some concepts. I am explaining the concept, how it works, how you are as a programmer, how you are going to use it, right? So then it's complete package, right? So there are no gaps, right? So then don't come to the final year and say I can't do my project. So we have covered everything, right? We have covered everything. Okay, right. So I hope you got it, right? If you have any questions, you have to ask and clarify here itself. Okay, right. So now none of these properties you can set, right? none of these properties you can set. But then someone will ask, if I want to set the name, what can I do now? Of course you can't set the name now, right? So the data hiding says hide your data, rather expose them through methods, right? So and again, Java Beans is a special way of special or conventional way of exposing those methods, right? So what we can do is to, if you want to expose, now remember this data hiding we can discuss for account class also. I will explain that also. Now remember we had the account class. We never hide these data because you can see this account class is not properly data hidden, right? For example, that is why we were able to set the account number there, right? You can see I am setting the account number, I am setting the balance also, I am setting the balance also. That is terrible thing, right? So terrible thing, can you go to the bank and say please set my balance to 1 lakh, right? So you go to the bank and say please set my balance to 1 lakh. It's never going to happen, right? So bank will say we are not supposed to set your balance to 1 lakh. Say now you have 50,000 balance, please go to the deposit machine and deposit 50,000, then your balance is going to be 1 lakh, right? So you can see, so we are not going to set your balance. You go and show that deposit behavior, right? Deposit behavior, then yes, it will be set to 1 lakh. So you can see, so they are not supposed to access the balance. They will ask you to show the behavior, right? So that is how the real world business also happening, right? Real world business also happening. So you want your salary is not going to be set, right? But time to time there will be salary increment behavior. Through that increment behavior your salary will be incremented, right? So you can see that is how the practically things are happening, right? Due to various policies, security, etc. Okay, so we in programming languages they think about those business policies and they come up with these restrictions, okay, right? So what we can do is to now forget about this one because we were not talking about the encapsulation at that time. Now we have the employee class. We have made it properly data hidden, but still there are situations we want to set the name. So what we can do is we can have a method, right, to set that name, right? For example, we can say void set, let's say set the name. Of course, if you are going to set the name, there must be a parameter. Let's say string, right? Let's say n, and in this method, we are going to set the name value, right? So the name, you remember that methods have access to the instance variables. Let's say n, n, right? Now, if I want to set the name, I can't just use dot notation. I have to say, for example, here e1 dot, now you can see the name property is no longer there, right? But you can call the set the name method and you can say animal or something, animal or something. Now you can see though the data is hidden, we got a facility to set access that property through the behavior. So that is why we call it it's also encapsulation. Now you can see your data is here protected, but you have some methods, so other objects can call these methods, right? Not here, right? Not here. Other objects can call the methods, right? Call the methods. Right? Other objects can call the methods. Of course, the method have access to the data, so thereby you are accessing the data but through the method. So that is more secure, more controlled way. Okay, so that is how you take it, right? Right, so just 1 minute. Right, so that is how you expose your attribute through a method, right? So now of course if you want to read the value, the name, still we can't read the name because why? the name is private, right? So you can't do, still we can't do something like system out println SOUT, uh, say I want to check what is the name of the E1. So I can't do something like this because it's private, right? It is private, so you can see it is red, right? So therefore I want to now expose another method to read the value, right? Read the value, so we can just call it, say it has written something string because it's a string value name. Let's say get employee name or whatever. Of course you need to have the reference variable, right? So we are going to return the instance variable, return name, right? Return name. So now if someone want to know what is the name of that particular employee that you have the reference variable, you have to call this method. Of course if you want, you can just make it public also. We will discuss those things when we discuss the access control in a separate session, right? So let's make it public to make it more explicit. Public, this one, so public. Right now we have specifically mentioned these are private, these are public. Okay, so public things you can call, private things you can't access, right? Even if you make a method those are private, you can't access it. So anyway we'll discuss those things now. If you want to read the employee's name, as if you have the reference variable, of course I have the reference variable, what you have to do is you have to use that reference variable and call the behavior again. What is that behavior? Get employee name, right? So now it will be printed as Nimal. Let's run it. Let's run it. So try to understand everything, every bit of it, right? So then, and you finish it, right? So don't plan to do object oriented programming in 2 years time. Next year, so don't think about that, right? So do something, understand sort of perfectly, face your exams, finish your subject, have that knowledge and confidence, take to the next level, right? So that is how the professional students do their tasks, right? Okay, so therefore whenever you have questions, ask, right? So okay, now you can see the, since I have called the get name method, so it says Nimal, right? So now I can work with the attributes, right? Though it is restricted, still I can work with these attributes using these behaviors, right? So using these behaviors or methods, right? Using methods I can access. So that means my employee class is properly following the data hiding concept, right? Data hiding concept. Okay, right? So that's we have this. So this is basically encapsulation. So creating classes, right? Creating methods. So we put it into structures, right? Some code blocks, right? Then of course this is data hiding, hiding the data and expose them through some behaviors, right? Expose them through behaviors. Okay, right. Now, as I told you, the third concept is now encapsulation. Special case of encapsulation is data hiding. Special way of doing the data hiding is use of Java beans, right? So what Java beans is all about, it rather than, now remember I deliberately pick some crazy names, so I call it set the name, right? Get the employee name, like you can say I'm not following in convention. So same thing can happen to any programmer, right? So he will be just following these without a convention. He will randomly pick some name to these methods. So what Java Bean says is, don't just randomly have those names for these methods. Have proper naming convention. If you follow proper naming convention, we say that your class is Java Bean class. So this is not a Java Bean class because I am not following the convention, right? So I am not following the convention. If I want to make it a Java Bean class, I have to follow a specific convention or sort of a rule. Then my employee class will become an employee bean, right? Employee bean, right? So what is the convention is, whenever you have a private variable, right, optionally you can have getters and setters, right? So to get is to get the value, set is to set the value. Okay, so the rule is your getters and setters must be, for example, if it is a setter, the return type must be void, and the setter name must be set and the property name, right? So if it is name, the setter name must be set name, not something like set the name or something. Okay, okay, then for the getter, the name must be get and the property name. Of course, since we have to follow the camel case, the n will be capital, right? So this is set name, this is get name. The set name method must have parameter compatible with that parameter, because name is a string, we have to have a string. The get name must return the data type of that particular, or the getter method must return data type compatible with the attribute. Okay, in my case name is string, therefore I have to return string. Now this is a Java bean. Of course this class is a Java bean because I have followed the proper naming convention for the getters and setters, right? So you can see, so another thing I want to mention is, usually when we write Java beans, uh, that is not a rule actually. Still this is Java bean, but programmers what they do is, rather than using these parameters and n or whatever, here also they use the same name as your property. For example, my attribute is name, I will call it name, right? I will call it name, then of course this has to be name. Now we have confusion. Why? The parameter is also name, instance variable is also name. So we discussed this confusion last time also. uh, Always the high priority is for the parameter, high priority is for the parameter. Now if I save this and if I run this, now remember I am calling the set name, now it is not set the name, it is set name, right? So this must be get name. Now let's see whether we are getting the value. So here it has to print Nimal because I am setting as Nimal, right? So earlier that was the case, right? So let's run it. Right, now you can see, though I am calling the get e1.get name, now it prints as null, not Nimal. So you can see I have set the name, but when I check the get, call the get value, it says null. Now you can see the trouble. When you write like this always refer to the parameter, not to the instance variable. Therefore the parameter name value of name is the parameter value, which is Nimal, something like the name has the value of Nimal here, but it never set to the instance variable. Because high priority, when you have the name confusion in a method, the priority is for the parameter, not for the instance variable. In this kind of a situation, because this must be the instance variable, now this is a place where you must use this keyword. Otherwise use of this is optional. Now we have to use this keyword. So in Java beans we have to use this keyword if you are using the same name as your parameter. Okay, so that is how it works. Okay, since we have, if you are working with databases and etc., remember this, just learning Java is not the end of the story. There are some database programming like JDBC. Then if you want to move on to a little bit more advanced things, there are some object relation mapping frameworks like Hibernate, Java Persistence API. In all those situations we heavily use the concept of beans, so Java beans. Therefore to help you generating these methods, so you just have to write the property, the core, the IDEs will generate these methods, right? Generate these methods. Almost all the IDEs have that facility, right? For example, if I want to generate the if I want to make it a Java bean, that means I want to generate the getters and setters. What I can do is I can just right click in the class itself. Now you can see getters and setters are not there. Right click in the class and say generate, right? This is IntelliJ, even NetBeans have this generate. Then you have, they will ask whether you need to generate only the constructor or the getters or the setters or just both. So I will say both getters and setters at the same time, right? Getters and setters. Then they will ask for which properties you want to generate, because there are situations, some properties we don't want to generate getters and setters. So I will say all three. I will say all three. I'm just using the control, right? Then it will generate the getters and setters. You can see So of course you can write it, but there are tools to generate the getters and setters, because these concepts are heavily used when it comes to database handling, right? So which we are not going to cover in semester one. So using these getters and setters, your database is going to call your business logic, or your business logic is going to call with the database. Okay, right? You can see it's nicely formatted nicely. It says salary, set salary, right? For here get salary, right? So it is using the same name as your property, therefore it has to use this keyword, right? So there's a special or special case, that is when it comes to getters and setters. Usually the getter is the get and the property name, set is the set and the property name. But if it is a boolean, that is why I've added this boolean variable married. Of course the setter will be set married, right? Set married, where you have the boolean property parameter married, which will be set to your instance variable. But when it comes to getter method, either you can write it as get married, or you can write it as is married, right? Only for boolean. So they have two conventions now. For the getter method, you can either use get married, just like the other methods like get salary, get name, or you can use is married, right? So that is another sort of a thing that you have to remember. Both are accepted because is married is more natural, therefore they have facilitated that also, right. So that is a special phase you have to learn. Right, so we are done with abstraction, we are done with encapsulation, and special case of encapsulation called data hiding, and special way of doing data hiding called use of Java beans. Right, so out of 4 concepts, now we are done with 2 concepts. Any questions up to this? So don't learn only inheritance and go and say I know for object-oriented programming, right? So of course you can tell you know object-oriented, but when they throw some questions, you are in trouble, right? When they ask you to do something, you are in trouble, right? So any questions up to now? No questions? So when you say no questions, I am very happy about 2 things, right? That is, I am very happy about myself, right? Because I am a perfect sort of a person that I can explain something in a perfect way. If I have 25 students, all 25 students can understand that without any issue at all, right? So that is me proud of myself, and of course me proud of yourself. All of you can straight away, right, like a whistle, you can get it, right? So you are really bright people. Okay, right. So let's move on to the inheritance. So we can see there will be so what we are going to see is this year there is going to be a flood of A pluses. Why? We have students who have no questions at all. Wait, whatever the concepts they are taught, they got it, they get it. Otherwise they are going to ask questions, right? Anyway, so let's see when you get the results also. Okay, right. So now we are going to discuss the third concept, right? So anyway, we have done the 2 concepts now, right? The abstraction and the encapsulation. Now we are moving to the inheritance, right? We are moving to the inheritance. So inheritance means so again I'm going to the definition. So inheritance is creation of hierarchy of classes, right? Creation of hierarchy of classes such that classes below the hierarchy get some features from classes above the hierarchy. So that is inheritance, right? So when you are giving answer definition, so try to give a sort of a perfect definition, right? So what I අනිත් මනුස්සයෙන් කතන්දරයක් අහන්න නැති වෙන්න, right? So anyway, I don't know how you are going to get your jobs, right? So there are different people, they try to get jobs in different ways. සමහරු දැන්ට මේ අම්මල තාත්තලා වැවලක් දන්නේ මේ පළාති മന്ത്രിතුමා ගාවට එහෙම මේ කැන්වසින් එහෙම යන්න කියලා. මොකටද? පුතාට ජොබ් කෑල්ලක් අවුල ගන්න. හරි? පිනට පින් ජොබ් එකක් හොයාගන්න. රයිට්? එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔයාම මේ දවස්වල දේශපාලකයෙකු පස්සේ එහෙම යනවද දන්නේ නැහැ. ජොබ් එකක් හොයාගන්න කියලා. හරි? සමහර මිනිස්සු එහෙම නැහැ. සමහර මිනිස්සු ප්‍රොෆෙෂනල්ස්ලා ඒගොල්ලන්ට එහෙම මානසිකත්වයක් නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලෝ තනියෙන් CV එකක් දාලා තමන්ගේ এডুকেෂන් එක කරගෙන තනියෙන් CV එකක් දාලා එක්සෑම් මේ ඉන්ටර්විව් එකට ෆේස් කරලා හරි බොහොම ආත්මාභිමානයක් එක්ක ජීවත් වෙන එක එකගේ පස්සෙන් යන්නේ නැති කට්ටිය ඉන්නවා. හරි එක එකාගේ සුද්ධ සිංහලෙන් කියනවා එක එකාගේ පස්ස පැත්තේ යන්නේ නැති කට්ටිය ඉන්නවා. තමන්ගේ දෙමව්පියන් යවන්නේ නැති කට්ටිය ඉන්නවා. ඒගොල්ලෝ දැන් අපි කියන්නේ professionals ලා කියලා. So if you want to be a professional, of course when you go to the interview, they will ask these kind of questions. What is mean by inheritance? So you have to say it's a creation of hierarchy of classes such that the classes below the hierarchy will get something. So that means when I say something, those are the attributes and behaviors from the classes above the hierarchy. So that is called inheritance. So likewise, then they are going to be very happy with you. Right? They know that okay, when you are given something, you can do that in a very precise way. Right? So you can work with minimum supervision. Right? So therefore, they can relax. They are doing their task while you are doing your task. Right? So that is what we need. Right? So right. So inheritance is creating a hierarchy of classes, and the classes below the hierarchy can get some features from the classes above the hierarchy. So it can go on like this. Right. So again, say A, B, C, D. Now you can see B is getting some features from A, and of course D is getting some features from B. That means obviously D is getting some features from A also, because those features B has gotten from the A. Right. So that is how it works. So D has got some features from B, which B has got from the A, and therefore D is having some features from both A and B. Right. So that is called inheritance. Right. That is called inheritance. Right. So there are a few terminology we want to use. Right. So the classes above the hierarchy is called superclass. For example, animal is the superclass of dog, and of course animal is the superclass of cat. And here we can say dog is a subclass of animal, and of course cat is a subclass of animal, right? So superclass and subclass, right? So if you have another class here, that class is also superclass of dog, right? All the classes above the hierarchy of a class is called superclasses. The below hierarchy classes are called subclasses. And again, if you look at this inheritance like this way, we call it specialization. Why? Dog is a special case of animal. Cat is a special case of animal. Right? So similarly, if you have something like account, right? Account, and we have the savings account. So savings account is a special case of account, right? And of course, account is a general case of savings account. So therefore, in this way, we call it generalization, right? So animal is a generalization of dog and cat, right? And of course, here you can have another account, something like this, current account, right? Current account, right? So savings account is account, current account is account. You can see savings account is a subclass of account, current account is a subclass of account, right? And of course account is the superclass of both these, and here you see generalization, here you see the specialization. And of course if you want you can have another class something like this, right? Savings accounts වල තව එකක් අපි දන්නවා සමහරවිට තියෙනවා නේද, super savings accounts where you have more benefits. So it's a special case of a savings account. අපි තියෙන වැඩි හිටියන්න තියෙන විශේෂ accounts වැඩිපුර මේ පොලි එහෙම ගෙවන. So that is you can subdivide subclasses from the savings account, because it is a savings account. Now it has the feature of a savings account as well as the account, whereas the current account has only the features of account and some special things. Right. So familiar with these terms, not only familiar with these terms, start using the concepts and start building something, right? Something meaningful, right? Then your life is going to be meaningful, right? Then you can say I am a software developer. I have learned IT. I know how to use IT, right? So there's another term here. So usually the inheritance is called is a relationship, right? So another term for inheritance is a relationship. Is a relationship. So there are some people they can't join. I don't know why. So I have accepted all the requests, right? So this thing is you again try to access it, or maybe you are trying to connect using a different URL, right? I don't know. They obviously they can't hear, right? So just uh, if anyone of your students friends can't log in, just let them know that use the correct link. Okay, right. So here you can see inheritance will create a is a relationship. Is a relationship. A dog is an animal, cat is an animal, right? Dog is an animal, cat is an animal. So we call it is a relationship. There are some other relationships also, like has a relationships, right? So those are coming from some other object-oriented concept. But if someone is talking about inheritance, we are talking about is a relationship. Okay, is a relationship. Right? So those are just terms we use. Right? So here you can see dog is an animal, cat is an animal, savings account is a account. Right? So now let's see how to use this concept and build some meaningful examples. So first we are going to just build a story. Then we will, because we are going to learn object-oriented concepts using stories. Right? So that is why I asked you to refer to the head first Java book, right? I think some students have uploaded that to the WhatsApp group. I saw, so that is very good, right? So think about others also, right? So let's do a small example to learn it. So let's first create a class called animal. So we are going to learn using a story. Animal, right? So animal class is going to have some attributes and behaviors, right? So let's say string name, right? So if you want to make it encapsulated, you have to make it private. For the time being, I'm not going to do that because I just want to demonstrate the concept of inheritance only here, right? Therefore I'm not going to data hide, right? Okay, then let's say uh, maybe something like double age, or let's say another string mood, right? mood එක මිනිහ happyද වලි තද වෙලාද ඉන්නේ ඒ වගේ එකක් හරි. Right. So because we are going to use these concepts in polymorphism, right? Right. So then we have uh, some behaviors, right? Some behaviors. So I deliberately make it not private. That means I am not interested about making it encapsulated or the data hidden class for the time being. Right. So let's have some behaviors. So assume that animal has the behavior of uh, say void eat. Behavior of eat, because every animal needs some foods, right? So let's say s out animal eats, right? So I'm just building a story. Through that story we are going to learn object orientation. So I'm using the same story that is used by the head first Java book. Okay, head first Java book, because that is my favorite book anyway, right? Actually I got that book when I was in the industry, I think about 20 years back. Okay, still that is the best book. Okay, so the best things will never get outdated unless someone come up with a better thing. Okay, right? So that is, we have behavior and some attributes also. Let's have one more behavior, void, let's say speak. I hope that every animal can make some sound, right? Of course there are some animals they can't do, but let's say speak for the time being. Animal sound, right? So let's have some weird sound, right? So this is, still we are not using inheritance, right? So still we are not using inheritance. What we are now going to do is use the inherit concept called inheritance. So we are going to get another class now. So I will close other classes. You can just say right click, close others, right? New Java class. I'm going to create a class called dog, right? Now I can, now the dog is also having the say name and mood. Dog also can eat, dog also can speak. So but what I'm going to do is, if I'm not using inheritance, I have to write all those things again, right? All those things again. But what I'm going to do is, I don't want to do like that, because that is a waste of effort and it's not maintainable. Duplication of code, so many issues are there. So what I'm going to say is, I'm going to say extends animal. So that means my dog is an animal, right? My dog inherit features from animal, right? Now I'm creating this class hierarchy. I have the animal. Now I have a dog extends from animal. My dog is an animal. Okay, dog is animal. So I am not going to write anything just right now, right? Now let's create a test class. Let's say test demo OOP, demo inheritance. Right, so there what I'm going to do is, I'm going to have public method. So it looks like a lot of students can't access it, but I am not getting any request also. Right, so I'm not getting. So I think those who are not in the Google Classroom is having the issues. Anyway, I will be uploading the video. Okay, I'll be uploading the video because these days it has some issues. Okay, anyway, so we'll continue. I will be uploading the video for those who can't access. Right, so I have the dog class now, and also the animal class. So the dog is an animal. So how we model that? We extend from animal. Now let's create create the main method psvm. So let's create animal object first. Animal, let's say a1 equal new animal. Right, at any time when you see a issue, or you can't continue, or you lost it, that means you something is not in your mind, or something you can't understand, just ask it, right? Google හිතනක් දන්නේ මේ question අහන එක හරි ලැජ්ජ හිතෙන්න ඕන වැඩක් කියලා. හරි, question අහන එක ලැජ්ජ වෙන්නේ මොකටද? හිතේ තියාගෙන ඉන්න එක තමයි ලැජ්ජාව, තේරෙන්නේ නැති දෙයක්. හරි, ඒකට තමයි ලැජ්ජ කට්ටිය, shy කට්ටිය. Right, so let's set some things. A1 dot name, because I am not using encapsulation. Let's say Annie, right? Annie. So I'm building a story. Let's say A1 dot mood. Let's say happy, right? Happy. Now let's see whether that animal object can show some behaviors. I'm going to call A1 dot speak and A1 dot eat. Right, so let's run it and see. Now in the speak behavior, what must happen? It has to say animal leads system out, just to check whether the methods are getting called. Of course, in the real world software development, there will be some business logic here, right? So we are not looking at these things in a serious way. Actually, we are thinking about the inheritance, polymorphism, and those things serious way. But we don't want to think about other serious things like deposit, withdraw, etc. Therefore, we take it as a story, right? Then you can use these. Once you understand the concept, you can use it for some serious business applications. Okay. Right, so let's see the output. So still this is getting run. Right, you can see there are two outputs: animal sound, animal leads, obviously, because we are using the animal object, or we are creating animal object. So just to make it a little bit more interesting, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to refer to these variables here. Right, so let's say animal, or let's have the name first, name, then something like this. Right, so remember, instance variable have access to the instance methods have access to the instance variable. We discussed that last time, right? So here also I'm going to do the same thing, name, just to make it more interesting or more informative. And now what happened is you will see what is the which animal is doing also. Now you can see, right? So after about 45 minutes, we will be in a serious polymorphism. Okay, so therefore just keep concentrating. හරි මේ පොඩි කතන්දරයක් කියන්නේ කියලා අහක බලන්න එපා. අහක බලනකොට ඔයාලට ලොස් වෙයි. Right, now you can see any animal sound and any animal is eating. Okay, animal is eats. Okay, animal eats. Right, now let's create a dog object, because dog is animal. Dog must have all these features, right? So let's call it dog d1. Let's say dog. Now this is going to be d1, everywhere it's going to be d1, because dog is animal. Dog has all those features. Dog has all those features that animal has. Why? Dog inherited all those from animal. Okay, so now let's see how it's work. So let's have a different name. Let's say doggy, and also that dog is also happy. Now we can see we have a dog class and the animal class. We can create dog objects, animal objects, as well as we can create dog objects. Right, now you can see still my dog has only animal features, no special dog features. Why? The dog class has nothing. Right, it has inherited everything from animal, but still my dog has no dog nature, but it has inherited all the animal nature. Okay, right. Now let's move on. So I have demonstrated what is the inheritance. So it has inherited, the dog class has inherited the attributes. That is why I was able to set these attributes to the dog also, and also it has inherited these behaviors, right? Speak behavior and eat behavior. Okay, right. So let's create another class now. So same thing I'm going to use for polymorphism. Therefore I'm taking some time. Let's say cat. So again I'm going to say cat extends animal. Right? So it's now my class hierarchy is something like this. So I have cat class also, which is also extended from animal class. So my cat is animal, right? My cat is animal, right? Now let's now I can create cat objects also. My cat will behave just like a animal. So let's say cat. Let's call it C1. And keep on repeating. About 90% of the students, right? So they can't explain especially polymorphism, right? Especially polymorphism. So that is why they are not assume that. So just think about this, right? You want to be a software developer. You really like to be a software engineer. You completed your BIT degree. So assume this as a scenario, very practical scenario. Okay, assume that you have completed your degree. Of course not everyone is going to be software engineers. You can have your other aspirations, right? I want to be accountant, I want to be a housewife, right? I want to be a very good housewife, I want to be a government servant, right? So those so maybe there are few students here, at least some students, they want to be a software engineer in the future, right? Or IT professional. Assume that you have completed your BIT degree. Now what you have to do? They are not going to come to your home and recruit you as a software engineer. You have to apply for the post, right? Job postings. Then if they are happy with your CV and your whatever, they will call you for interview. Now you have to talk, right? So in the interview you have to talk, because you can't send your mother හොරපාරෙන් අමව ඇමතික ගෙදරට යවලා මේ වැඩේ කරගන්න බෑ. Private sector is a very competitive sector, right? So now you have to go to the interview They will ask various questions. They will ask you to some develop some small code chunks, right? So now you have to face the reality, right? So you have, if you want that professional career, right, very independent, right, person, have these competencies with you. Otherwise, yes, you can send your mother to the amathika gedetta, right, for a parent, right? So that is terrible thing. Okay. Okay, so we have created a cat object now. So let's give it a name, kitty. So let's say the kitty is not happy, right? Kitty is sad, right? So again, kitty can speak, and of course kitty can eat. Why? Kitty is animal. Kitty is animal, so kitty can do all those things. Okay, now let's run it and see. Right, now you can see that I have animal objects, dog objects, and of course a cat object, right? So all the dog and cat has inherited everything from the animal, right? Still my cat is having only animal nature, my dog is having only animal nature, no special things, right? No special things, right? Now let's move to our note. So we are going to use this class for explain the other things, right? Right, so we are going to use this particular examples throughout. Right, so now let's see how the inheritance works. First, we'll start with constructors. Okay, so what we have is, still we have not, remember last time we discussed about constructors. So let's create a constructor for animal. Void, you know how to write constructors. It is like a method. Sorry, it is like a method, but it must not have any return type, and its name must be same as the case sensitive class name. So therefore, constructor name is animal. Let's say no argument constructor, and just to check whether the constructor is called, we will have something like animal created, right? Animal created. uh, of course, when animal object is created, what will happen? Animal constructor is going to be created, right? So let's have constructors for dog and cat as well. So obviously the name must be dog. There I will say dog created. Cat also I'm going to have constructor cat. Okay, it got stuck. Just wait. So I'm just waiting for the control to back. Right. Right. So if something stuck on, the best thing you have to do is be patient. Okay. Cat. Right. So otherwise it will mess it everything. Right. So let's say cat created. Cat created in the dog class. I hope I said dog created. Yes. You don't have to save these things, right? You just keep coding. When you run, everything will be saved. Now you can see why this is bold. There are some unsaved things also. But anyway, so when you run, it's going to be saved everything before running. Okay. Right. So now it's getting run. And now let's see which constructors have been created. Now here you can see animal created, obviously how it comes, because we created a animal object. So this output is from that, right? And then of course we are calling the speak behavior, that is why we got this. We are calling the eat behavior, that is how we got this. So now you can understand these three lines. Okay. Now we are creating a dog object, right? Dog object. Now what you can see is there are two things: animal created, dog created. So earlier when animal object is created, only animal constructor was called. But now you can see when dog object is created, first animal constructor is called, then dog constructor is called. So that is how it works. That is how it works. So you can see when a dog object is created, so this is a story, right? When a dog object is created, what happens is first your animal nature is created, right? Animal nature of the dog is created, so that is why the dog constructor is called. Sorry, animal constructor is called. Then on top of that animal features, it build the dog features. So therefore what happens? Now after dog animal constructor is called, now the dog constructor is also called. So that is why we have the animal created and dog created two outputs. One is coming from the animal constructor, the second output is coming from the dog constructor. So that is something you have to understand, right? So whenever a subclass is created, right, whenever a subclass is, or instance of a subclass is created, first it will call the constructor of the topmost superclass, then the next one up to the current class, right? So here of course we have only two classes, but there are some more classes above. This constructors we call from top to the bottom. So that is something you have to learn, right? You have to understand. Once you understand these things only, you are going to understand how the software is working, right? How the software is working, right? So finally you will be in a very good position to do your project and all those things. Okay, right? So of course then we call the speak method and the eat method. So that is why we are getting this. Of course still the dog is only having the animal behaviors, so that is why we get this animal sound and animal eats thing. And then we are creating a cat object. Then of course first animal object constructor is called, then the cat constructor is called, right? So that those are things that you have to remember. Not remember. And then basically you have to understand how things work. Okay, then still my cat is showing only the animal behaviors just like my dog. Okay, right? So that is how the constructors are called, right? I'm now gradually moving. Right. So now we are discussing things related to inheritance. So definition එක දාලා inheritance ඉවරයි කියලා තීරේ වහන්න බෑ. මේක ඇතුළත ලොකු කතන්දර ටිකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ ඔක්කොම දන්න මනුස්සයා තමයි inheritance දාන්නේ. Right? Inheritance දාන්නේ. Right. So first the animal constructor is called, then the dog constructor is called. So that is how it works, right? Uh, in object oriented. Right, now let's discuss another concept. Now you know how the constructors are called in inheritance. Now the concept called overriding, right? So basically first I want to explain that, right? So when you have a class, when you have subclass, that means it is extended from this class, right? So this subclass is going to get, so these are things that you have to remember. First thing, this is a and B. So the B is going to inherit things from A. So that we have already discussed and demonstrated, right? My dog can speak, or speak, my dog can eat. That means behaviors are inherited. My dog has a name, my dog has a mood. That means attributes are inherited. Of course, now what is the first point? When you subclass from a class, your subclass will inherit the attributes and behaviors, right? So that is point one. Point two, your subclass can have your own attributes and behaviors, right? So that is point number two. It's something like this, right? I story so now when you are born, you inherited things from your father and mother, right? So සමහරට හැමේ වර්ණය අම්මගේ වගේ වෙන්නේ නැති, කොණ්ඩේ තාත්තගේ වගේ වෙන්නේ නැති, හරි hina වෙනකොට අම්මා වගේ වෙන්නේ නැති නේද? හරි හිතන්නේ ටිකක් තාත්තා වගේ වෙන්නේ නැති නේද? So that is inheritance. So that means when you create a class subclass, you get some things inherited, right? Of course you get your surname inherited from your father, right? So stuff like that. Then of course ඔයා මේ අම්මගෙන් තාත්තගෙන් inherit වෙච්ච දේවල් වලින් ජීවත් වෙන්නේ නැහැ නේද? So you can build up your own things. ඔයාට ඔයාගේම හැකියාවල් දියුණු කරගන්න පුළුවන්. හරි. ඔයාට පුළුවන් ඔයාටම ඕන වෙන වෙන දේවල් එකතු කරගන්න, properties වගේ දේවල්. So same thing, your subclass can have its own attributes and behaviors. Other than those inherited, your subclass can have its own attributes and behaviors. Okay. So the third one, right? So there can be some things that you are inherited, but you don't like it, right? You don't like it. You want to do it in a different way. Same thing, right? ඔයාට ඔයාගේ අපි හිතමු මම දන්නේ මේ එක්සැම්පල් එක හොඳද කියලා. හරි? ඔයාට මේ අම්මගෙන් හරි තාත්තගෙන් හරි ඉන්හෙරිට් කරලා තියෙනවා පොඩ්ඩක් හිතන විදියක්. හරි? හිතන විදියක්. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි හිතමු කතා කරන විදියක්. නැත්නම් හැමේ පාට වගේ නම් වෙනත් මින් කරගන්න අමාරුයි නේද? හැබැයි ඔයා කැමති නෑ ඒ විදියට. ඔයා කැමති නෑ අම්මා hina වෙන විදියට hina වෙන්න. නැත්නම් අම්මා හිතන විදියට හිතන්න. එතකොට ඔයාට පුළුවන් මොකද්ද? ඔයා ඒක වෙන විදියකට හිතනවා. ඔයා දන්නවා මේක අම්මගේ මට ඉන්හෙරිට් වුනේ මේව තමයි කියලා. හැබැයි ඔයා ඩිසයිඩ් කරනවා නෑ මම අම්මගෙන් ඉන්හෙරිට් වුණාට අම්මගෙන් ඉන්හෙරිට් වෙච්ච හැමදේම මම පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ නෑ. හොඳ දේවල් ටික මම පාවිච්චි කරනවා. මේක නරක දෙයක්. මේක මම වෙන විදිහකට කරනවා. right? මම අම්මා වගේ වෙන්නේ නෑ. මේ වැඩේදී. right? so මම තාත්තා වගේ වෙන්නේ නෑ මේ වැඩේදී. so the same thing you can do. So the you be subclass can do things inherited to be a subclass in a different way. So that is what is known as overriding. Right, overriding. So you can see there are three things, right? uh, of course there can be things that you inherited and you are just using as it is, right? Attributes and behaviors. You can do your new things, right? You can override the inherited things. That's it, right? So those are the three things that you can do in your subclass, right? Use some inherited features as it is, have some new attributes and behaviors, override the behaviors inherited in a different way, right? So overriding is only for the behaviors. These two are for attributes and behaviors, but overriding you can do only for behaviors. Okay, behaviors, right? So learn this like a story, right? Right now, let's move on gradually. Now in my animal class, what I have is only the first one, that is my dog class. So it has using only the things inherited, nothing new, nothing overridden, right? Of course the constructor is not doing new thing. So dog can only act as an animal, nothing new is there, nothing is overridden, right? So my dog is just an animal. Now let's have some new things, right? Because dog want to have some new features, right? New attributes and behaviors, right? So let's say my dog want to have a new attributes, right? All the dogs are going to have special attribute. Let's say string, uh, let's call it a breed. Encapsulation කියයි නේද? So let's say not only the name, my dog has a breed. So that means my subclass has new feature, right? So now again let's have a new behavior also. Let's say roam, void, roam. ඔබ දන්නේ බල්ලෝ ටිකක් but ඇවිදින්න එහෙම යන්න කැමති ඉන්නේ අර එහෙම. So let's have a shout. I'm always using the, remember this dog has the name property, right? Because inheritance name. Let's say dog roams. Now you can see my class dog. Of course it has inherited from animal the name, name, mood, and of course it has inherited the eat and speak behaviors. But now my dog has a new feature called breed, and of course it has a new behavior called roam, right? So let's do the same for the cat also. For the cat we are going to have a different thing. Let's say string, right? Nothing comes to your mind for cat specific thing. I don't know. Can someone come up with a property for cat? I'm running out of ideas. String or whatever. Say your cat has property. Let's say color for the time being, right? Then your dog will also have color, but most of the cats have same color anyway. For the time being, let's say color, and let's have a behavior also. Let's say something like climb, void climb. So just to see whether that behavior is called, we are going to have a system out. We are going to have a system out. So let's say name and cat climbs. Now you can see my cat has some inherited things, and also my cat has its own thing, right? Now you can see My dog can only set these properties and these behaviors, right? Nothing else. But my dog, if I want, I can set this property, that is d1 dot the breed property is available, right? Breed property is available. I will say, right? Whatever, right? මම දන්නේ බලමු තියෙන වර්ග say Alsatian or whatever. I don't know how to pronounce Alsatian, right? SOT, whatever, right? And of course my dog can behave new features. Now my dog can roam බලන්න පොඩ්ඩක් එහෙම ඇවිදින්න පුළුවන්, right? So but we can't do this for animal, right? So for example I can't say something like this, a1 dot breed, right? A1 dot breed. Why? You can see it's red, right? Red, because my animal class don't have a attribute called breed, right? So therefore I can't do like this, right? I can't do like this, but of course the dog can, right? Dog has new features, new attributes. So let's do the same thing for cat also. Let's say c1 dot name, sorry, color, right? Color, let's say white, right? And of course your c1 can show the behavior of climb, right? So for example of course c1 can climb, but your dog d1 can't climb, right? So d1 can't climb. Why? You can see red. Your cat has the climb behavior, because cat has the climb behavior which is your dog can't see. Dog can see only the what it can do and the above, right? So therefore dog can't climb, and at the same time your cat can't roam also, right? Cat can't roam also. So you can see now new things are also added, right? So now let's see whether those things are getting called. Right, you can see your doggy can roam. Why? Dogs are supposed to roam, though animals can't. And of course your cat can climb. Though your dog can't climb, your cat can climb. That means my cat class has not only inherited features from animal, it can have its own features and attributes also. That means it can have its own attributes, it can have its own behaviors, right? So that is second thing. So just like you will be inherited from your father and mother, your parents, but you can develop your own capabilities, right? With your parents haven't had. And of course you can have your own attributes, right? Own attributes, right? For example, yes, your parents may not have a degree, but you may have a degree, right? So that is, you can have your own attributes, right? You can have your own behaviors. Maybe your parents can't sing, but you can sing, right? So that you have that attribute which is not inherited from your parents, but you develop that unique behavior. Okay, right? So those are the two things, right, that you have to remember. Now as I told you, there is a third component, that is, now you can see my cat has inherited the behavior called eat, or behavior called speak. But my cat is not happy about this. My cat want to speak in a different cat way, or my dog want to speak in a dog way, not just like any other general animal. So what we can do is, now we are going to the third concept. We can override. We can override. So if you want to override, what you have to do is, that means my dog is not happy with the animal behavior. For that, so its dog class is going to have the same method with the same signature, right? Same name and everything, right? Same name and that parameters, right? Of course the return type. Then you are basically overriding. So now what we are going to say is, let's say cat sound. So this is dog, so not cat. Dog sound, let's say wow, right? So that is, you are overriding. Because peak behavior is in the animals class also, but you are overriding. So let's say cat has not overridden it. Cat has not overridden it, but my dog has overridden it. Okay. So now let's see what happens. Now remember, earlier when we call the speak behavior for dog, right? D1, what happened? What happened to the speak behavior? It's just the animal sound. You can say sound baha, right? So why? My dog has never overridden it. Just the inherited animal speak behavior was there. But now what we have done is, now my dog has overridden the speak behavior. Therefore, I am not going to get this output now, right? I am not going to get this output. I am going to get the dog behavior for the speak behavior. Speak. Okay. Now let's see it. So likewise, you understand the concept like a story. Okay. So right now, let's see. Now you can see, of course, the animal will speak in the animal way, right? Because animal has to speak in the animal way. But now look at the dog, right? So now the dog is, when dog is created, first the animal constructor is called, then the dog constructor is called. Now you can see I just call the speak behavior. It is not the animal behavior now, it's a dog behavior, right? So it's a dog behavior. Now you can see there's nothing called animal sound, it is dog sound, right? Dog sound. So that is how it happens, right? For example, if you have, say, dog class and, sorry, animal class and dog class, here you have the method called x. Here also you have the same method with the same signature x. Then you create a dog object and call the x behavior. What happens is it will not call this behavior, it will call this behavior, right? So that is what is known as overriding, right? So always the constructor will look at from the bottom to the top where is that behavior is. If it found the behavior here, it is going to call that behavior, not the this behavior. But if it is not there, it will keep looking in the hierarchy. Okay, it found it here, it will be called. Now that is the case when it comes to cat speak, because remember, cat class, we don't have the speak behavior, right? So it has not overridden the speak behavior, but the dog had. Therefore what happens is when we call the speak behavior for cat, because there is no speak behavior for cat, it will just call the speak behavior for animal, right? So let's see, for the cat. Now we can see cat is created. Now we can see kitty animal sound. Why? My kitty don't have a cat specific speak behavior, so it has to rely on the animal behavior. Animal behavior. Now I hope you got it. That is how the overriding works, right? So it is at runtime. It will check whether you have overridden the method. If not, it will keep looking for the classes above, right? Until it find it. Of course, it has to find something, otherwise there is a compile error. Okay, right? So that is what is known as overriding, right? So overriding. So that is very critical concepts. You might think that okay, that is a very simple concept, but that is the most important, one of the most important concepts in uh, object-oriented programming, right? So you will learn those things, appreciate the beauty of these things when you are doing some serious programming, like when you are doing your final year project, etc. Okay, so I will just show you some code, maybe related to the some. Now we are doing some uh, project also. We are now doing some classes. So if you go for something like a framework, right? Something like framework. So I will just take a command prompt and show you the. Now තාම මෙතන කතා කරන්නේ dogs cats ගැන. හරි, ඔයා ෆයිනල් ඉයර් ගියාම dog cats එක කතා කරලා හරියන්නේ නැහැ ආ. හරි, ඔයාට real world application එක වැඩ කරන්න. ඒ complexity එක handle කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට තමයි maths එහෙම උගන්වන්නේ. ඔයා බලන්න මොකද මේ අපිට indices උගන්වන්නේ, logarithms උගන්වන්නේ, modular arithmetic උගන්වන්නේ කියලා. හරි. ඔයාට ඒවා උගන්වන්නේ ඒ complexity එක handle කරන්න ඔයා පුරුදු කරනවා. ඊට පස්සේ ඔයාට complexity එකට බය නැති වෙනවා. බය නැති කරගත්ත අය. හරි. So let's see. Right, I am loading another IDE for PHP just to show you how these object-oriented concepts are used. There you have to use it, right? මේ ඔබ තේරෙන්නේ නැතුව framework එකක් වැඩ කරන්න බෑ. This is a Laravel framework. Using Laravel, how to develop a web application. This is not website. You are supposed to develop a web application, right? Order processing system, inventory management system, right? So what you have is everywhere. You can see class visa controller extends controller, right? So I hope you can see it, right? Right. So class visa controller extends control. So we are using inheritance. Then we are sometimes we are adding our own features, right? Sometimes we have to override some of these methods, right? So this is a controller class. Similarly, you will have model classes as well, right? For example, this is a model class, right? You can see use class user extends authenticatable, right? Authenticatable, right? So you can see some protected methods are there, some attributes are there, some behaviors are there, and of course you are getting a lot of things from the inheritor, right? So those things they have coded in their framework, right? So therefore your task is less. When you use a framework, you have to do less work, but to get this, you have to understand these concepts. Then only you know that this is going to happen like this because they have coded it in that way. I am going to inherit that feature, therefore I can just use it, right? So of course your life is going to be very easy, but if you have understood. If you have not understood, you are in a very messy situation, right? So that is just I show you how to do some real world uh, software development, right? So you have to, of course, you have to work with HTML, PHP, CSS. You have to mixture of all those things. Then it's going to be complex, right? ඒක තමයි මම කියන්නේ ඔයාලට software engineering mindset එකට එන්න කියලා. ඔයා එක එක වෙලාවට මේ එක එක concepts ඔලුවට දාගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕන නේද? Abstraction කියන concept එක තියෙන්න ඕන. ඔයාලට නැත්තම් බය වෙනවා ඔයා. හරි? දැන් මේ code එක දැක්ක කියලා අපි බය වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි එක වෙලාවක concentrate කරන්නේ view එක. හරි? එක වෙලාවක business logic එක. එක වෙලාවකට database එක. database call එක ලියනකොට මට CSS HTML මතක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. එහෙම මතක් වුණොත් මට පිස්සු වැදෙනවනේ නේද? ඒක දැන් separate කරනවා කියන්නේ concerns. හරි separate කරලා වෙන වෙනම අරගෙන අපි මේ complexity handle කරනවා. එහෙම කරන්න පුළුවන්. එහෙම කරන්න පුළුවන් හන්දනේ මිනිස්සු complex දේවල් කරන්නේ එහෙම කරන්න පුළුවන් අයට කරන්න පුළුවන්. හරි? Right. So that is just to explain that these things are going to be used. Though we are just talking about the cats and dogs here, right? Of course, we are going to start with cats and dogs, but we are going to end up in serious software development, right? Right. So I hope you got the concept of overriding also. Now you can see that your subclass will inherit some features. You can have your own things, and of course, if you are not happy with the inheritance, you can always override, right? Just like your real world, right? If you are not happy with the feature that you inherited from your father, you can be a better person, right? So of course. Okay, so let's move on. So we discussed what is my overriding, but when it comes to overriding, make sure that your method signature is exactly the same. Okay, your method signature is exactly the same. Otherwise, it is not overriding. Otherwise, it's a new behavior, right? Right. Then overloading, we discussed already in our structured programming. Overloading means having the methods with same name but different signature. So that is not a very serious thing. Okay. For example, here you have method dex. Of course, the overloading can happen in your subclasses as well, right? So that remember, the same class can have different signatures as well as your subclass will have the overloaded version, right? For example, if we call method dex with a string parameter, it will call in this one, right? Otherwise, if there is no string parameter, it will be calling this one. But that is not overriding. That is overloading because this version will be called, this version will be called for different parameters. Alright, you may think that this is same as overriding. No, this is completely different. This is overloading. Right? Overloading can happen in the same class as well as in your class hierarchy. Then the correct version will be called. That is not inheritance. Okay, that is overloading. But if you have any questions, you can ask. Again, go through this. Right? So difference between overloading and overriding. Right. So now we are done with the core of the inheritance. Now we are moving to some other related concepts. That is the concept called final method, abstract method, abstract class, etc. Okay, right. So let's see what is mean by a final method. Right. So a method is if you mark a method as final, you can't override that method. Right? You can't override that method. So usually any method you can override, but if you mark a method as final method, you can't override. So that is called that is what is meant by final method. For example, now remember we have overridden the speak method, right? Uh, in the dog class, and of course in the cat class we didn't overridden, but in the dog class we override the speak method. Why? My speak method is not a final method, but if I mark it as something like final void, now subclasses cannot override the speak behavior. That must it has to use the parent class behavior, right? So now let's go to the dog class because I have overridden the speak behavior. Now I am going to get a red. Now you can see all of a sudden it's red. It is compiled as it says you can't speak cannot be override. Speak in animal uh, you cannot override speak in animal. Overridden method is final. Right? So this method is final in the animal class. Therefore you can't do that. So if you want to restrict a class subclasses from overriding a behavior, you have to mark it as final. Right? So then someone will ask uh, why, right? Why? uh, so the reason is usually overriding is we don't, so usually we don't mark any method final unless there is a very special reason, right? Very special reason only we will make it as final. Otherwise we will always make it non-final. Okay. For example then ඔයාට අම්මගෙන් හරි තාත්තගෙන් හරි මොකක් හරි කතා කරන විදියාව නම් ඔයාට අම්මලා තාත්තලා රෙස්ට්‍රික්ට් කරන්නේ නැහැ නේ ඔයා මං වගේම කතා කරන්න ඕනේ මැරෙනකන් කියලා නේද? එහෙම කරන්නේ නැහැ සාමාන්‍යයෙන්. හරි එහෙම කරන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද එතකොට අර concept එක එච්චර හොඳ නැහැ. But there can be special situation. හරි. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට ඔයාගේ අම්මා හරි තාත්තා හරි කියන්න පුළුවන් හරි අපි මේ ආයතනේ පාලනය කරේ මේ විදිහට. ඔයාට ආයතනේ මම බලය දෙනවා. හැබැයි ඔයාත් මේ විදිහටම පාලනය කරන්න ඕනේ. හරි උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි මේක පාලනය කරේ non profit organization එකක් විදිහට. ප්‍රොෆිට් බලාගෙන නෙමෙයි. ඔයාට බිස්නස් එක බාර දෙනවා. ඔයාත් කවදාවත් මේකෙන් ප්‍රොෆිට් ගන්න එපා. ඔයාත් මේක ඒ විදිහටම කරන්න ඕනේ. So එතකොට ඔයාට මේ behavior කාර්ය කොහමද? Final. Of course you inherit. You inherit it, but you can't override. You can't override it. You have to rely on the same behavior, right? Same behavior. So it's a special case, right? එහෙම සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වෙන්නේ නැහැ නේද? But there can be special case. Same thing. If a overall functionality heavily depends on the way it is implemented in the superclass, and if you allow it subclass to do it in a different way, if the whole system is going to be collapsed or there can be some security issues or anything, then of course you can make it final. You can make it final. So those are advanced things. Anyway, you will learn how to where what are the kind of situations like that when you are learning some advanced concepts. For the time being, make sure that if a method is final, if you try to override it, you will get a compile error, right? So basically making method final means you prevent overriding, right? So you force all your subclass to rely on the original behavior. Okay, so that is what is known as the use of the final keyword. Okay, right. Then we have a concept called final classes. So remember, when it comes to a class can be subclass. That is what is known as inheritance, right? For example, I have subclass the animal class to create the dog class, right? Dog class. But if I want to prevent any class from subclassing the animal class, what I can do is I can say public final class animal. Now no class can extend from animal, right? So that means that is the end of my inheritance hierarchy. No other classes can be extended from animal class. Now let's see, we have already extended the dog and cat from animal. Now we must get errors. Now you can see there's a red, cannot inherit from a final animal, right? So cat also going to say face the same fate. Now cat can't inherit from animal. Why? My dog class is final, right? So my dog class is, sorry, my animal class is final, right? Again, so you have to ask that question why. Again, I will say very rarely you will very rarely you will mark a class as a final. Very rarely. Why? the moment you mark a class as a final, you are preventing inheritance. So inheritance is a very useful feature in object-oriented programming. So why do you want to prevent the concept called inheritance? So therefore, that is why I am saying very rarely you will make a class final, right? So very rarely. But if there are very special reason to prevent your class being subclass, of course you can mark it as final, right? Of course you can mark it as final. Okay, so it's very rare situation. Okay, again it can be for security reasons, and in subclasses the whole concept is going to be uh, collapse due to some conceptual issues. So I am not going to explain those possible scenarios, right? But there are, even the JDK has some classes marked as final to prevent the unintended behaviors. Okay, so just remember that if a class is final, uh, you can't subclass. If a method is final, still the can be subclass, but the method can't be overridden. Right? Two things, right? Final keyword can be used for methods. Final keyword can be used for class. Okay, so let's move on. Now we are going to discuss a concept called abstract class. Right? Abstract class. Right? හරියට නිකන් මේ ෆයිනල් ක්ලාස් එකක් කියන්නේ හරියට රහත් වෙනවා වගේ. මොකද දැන් රහත් වුණාට පස්සේ එතනින් ජීවිතේ ඉවරයි නේ. ආයි ඊළඟට එන්නේ නැහැ කියන මම දන්නේ. එහෙම කියනවනේ. අය වගේ තමයි. ආයි යාගේ සබ් ක්ලාසස් හැදෙන්නේ නැහැ. එතනින් ඉවරයි. right? Inheritance එක ඉවරයි. right? But in programming, yes, we can do it. I don't know. In reality, you can. But rahat වෙන්න පුළුවන්ද කියලා. Right? Right. So let's move on to the other concept. Another concept, abstract class. So remember we discussed as a concept also abstraction, right? Abstraction, encapsulation, inheritance. But this here the term abstract is used for something related, but as a different concept. Okay. So abstract class means. So if you want to make it a class abstract, you have to use the keyword abstract before the class. Abstract class means that class cannot be instantiated, or you can't create object out of abstract class. Now remember, my animal class is not abstract class, it's just a class. Therefore, at any time I can create animal objects, right? Animal objects, right? Animal objects. But if I mark this as abstract, public abstract, right? Abstract, that means creation of instances of this class is prohibited. That means I can't create animal objects. Now let's say I'm creating animal objects here. Now all of a sudden I'm getting errors, right? So why? It says animal is abstract, cannot be instantiated. Yes, if a class is abstract, you can't create object out of it. Right? You can't create object out of it. So that is the concept called abstraction, right? That is concept called abstraction. So but of course you can use it for inheritance, right? So for example, my dog class can still inherit from animal. My cat class can inherit from animal. The only thing is now you can actually create dog object, cat objects also, right? Your dog is inherited from the animal, and you are creating dog objects. Your cat is inherited from animal, and you are creating cat object. Only thing is you can't create animal objects, right? So that is the only thing, right? So then again someone will ask why. So I will give 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes, 1 minute. Can someone explain what is the reason of use of abstract classes? ඕක තමයි කල්පනා කරනවා කියන්නේ. දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ මේ විදිහ සමහරට යතින් නේද ඔබ්ජෙක්ට් ඔරියන්ටඩ් ඉගෙනගෙන ඉන්න ඇත් මෙතන. පොත් කියවලා නේද? why කියන එකට උත්තරේ නැතුව සබ්ජෙක්ට් එකයි කියලා තේරුමක් නැහැ. මම කියන්නේ ඒක කියන්නේ පිස්සෝ කියලා. හරි. පිස්සෝ දැකලා ඇති නේද? ඔහේ ඇවිදිනවා. ඇයි කියලා ඔයගොල්ලෝ උඩට උත්තරයක් තියනවද? දන්නේ නැහැ. ඇවිදින්න ඕන නම් ඇවිදිනවා. So can someone tell me possible reason why we need to have abstract classes? So basically, yes. Actually, we are going to make this animal class abstract. That make a lot of sense. That make a lot of sense to make this abstract class. Can someone tell me a possible reason? Can someone tell me? Put it in the chat. head first පොත කියවපු අය ඉන්නවනම් දැන් කියන්න ඕන. මම දැක ෂෙයා කරලා තියෙනවා. සමහර කියවන්න තරම් වෙලාව හම්බ වෙන්නේ නැතුව ඒක ඔක්කොම ටිකනේ. දැන් මීට කලින් abstract කියන concept එක abstract class කියන concept එක අහලා තියෙනවා නම් ඉගෙනගෙන තියෙනවා. ඇයි ඒකට එහෙම එකක් තියෙන්නේ කියලා කියන්න බැරි නම්. හරි? ඔයාගේ තේරුමක් තියනවද? abstract class කියන එක ඉගෙනගෙන. Prevent redundancy. So that no. So one answer is prevent redundancy. So that is not a very good answer. But I don't know what you mean by redundancy. If you can explain it, I might take it as answer. But the word itself is not good enough. The word itself is not good enough. Can someone talk and explain? So what is the purpose of having classes abstract? So abstract means you prevent creation of objects. It is only for inheritance. It is only for inheritance. You can't create object out of it. Right. So I will give you a very simple example. Right. So if you take something like banking system, what happens? To be separated from others. No, that is also not good enough. Right. ඒවට එහෙම කරා නම් අපි දාන්න මොනවද? Object oriented concept එකක් දානවා මොකක් කියලාද? To be separated from others කියන එකට. එහෙනම් අපි කියනකොට abstract classes කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? quarantine කරනවා කියලා. නේද? එහෙනම් අපිට object oriented වල concept එකක් එනවා. මොනවාද? Abstraction, inheritance, quarantine කියලා. No. Not to separate from others. Right. So the answer is why we want to have abstract classes. Now let's take example. Say you have, I'm going back to the note. Right. So assume that something like this. So you have say bank. Right? So we have bank. There you have account. So this is account. And here you have the savings account, inherited from account, and of course you have the current account. Then you will have something like super savings account, senior citizens account, which is a special savings account with even higher and interest, right? Okay, so account is a class, savings account is a class, current account is a class, senior savings account is a class. Okay, so in a bank you have all these concepts. නේද? බැංකුවක් ගාව මතක් වෙනවද? අර බැංකුවක් ගාව මතක් වෙනවද? ඔයාට එක පැත්තේ මතක් වෙයි සල්ලි, අනිත් පැත්තේ මතක් වෙනවද? accounts. හරි, accounts තමයි තියෙන්නේ. හරි, ඔයාට accounts තියෙනවා, මට accounts තියෙනවා, තව කෙනෙක්ට ආයතනයකට accounts තියෙනවා. Right, now you go to the bank. Right? Say you are new to this world. අඟහරු ලෝකෙන් ආවා කියලා හිතන්න. ඔයාලට ආරංචියක් වෙන account බැංකුවට ගිහලා account තමයි බැංකුවේ ප්‍රධාන concept එක කියලා. You go to the bank, go to the reception and you ask, please, I want to start an account. Now what is going to be the result? Now what you are telling? Go to the bank and you said, of course I heard that the main concept in bank is account. Please start an account. I want to start an account. Now what is going to be the result? ඔයා ඇත්තටම ඔයා ගිහිල්ලා බැංකුවට ගිහිල්ලා මෙහෙම කිව්වොත් ඔයාට බැංකුවේ ඉන්න කෙනා කියන උත්තරේ මොකක්ද? කියන්න බලන්න. ඔයා නම් රිසෙප්ෂනිස්ට්. ඔයා දෙන උත්තරේ ප්‍රශ්න උත්තරේ මොකද්ද? බැංකුවට ගිහිල්ලා ඔයා කියනවා මට account එකක් open කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා. බැංකුවෙන් දෙන උත්තරේ මොකද්ද? account open කරන්න බෑ. ඔච්චරයි. So that means you can't create instance of accounts. Right? You can't create instance of accounts. Right? But account open කරන්න ඔයාලට බෑ. ඔයාලට ඕන නම් පුළුවන් savings account එකක් open කරන්න. ඔයාලට පුළුවන් current account එකක් open කරන්න. අපේ බැංකුවේ කිසිම customer කෙනෙක් නැහැ මෙච්චර කාලයකට account open කරපු අය. අපි ඒගොල්ලන්ට open කරන්නේ එක්ක savings account එකක්, එක්ක current account එකක්, එක්ක senior citizens account එකක්, එහෙම නැත්නම් children account එකක්. ඒවට තේනද බැංකුවේ කිසිම customer කෙනෙක් නැහැ account තියෙන. හැබැයි ඔක්කොම ඉන්නේ කවුද? ඒ කියන්නේ මේක instances නෑ බැංකුවේ. බැංකුවේ තියෙන්නේ මේවා instances මේවා instances මේවා instances. දැන් ඔයාලට තේරෙනවා මොකද්ද account කියන class එක මොනවද කරන්න ඕනේ? abstract කරන්න ඕන. right? account object හදන්න බෑ. accounts කියලා concept එකක් නෑ ඇත්තටම. ඇත්තම concept එක තියෙන්නේ මොකද account කියන concept එක. For inheritance, savings account will inherit the balance, account number, deposit, withdraw, right? All those things are concept related to account, but no one is going to create accounts. මට එක්කෙනෙක් හරි කියන්න බලන්න සම්පත් බැංකුවේ මහජන බැංකුවේ මේ විශේෂ account නොවන නිකම්ම account එකක් තියෙන කෙනෙක් ඉන්නවද? එක්කෙනෙක්වත් මෙතන නැහැ. මුළු ලංකාවෙම එක්කෙනෙක්වත් නැහැ. හරි? හැමෝටම තියෙන්නේ මේවා එකක්. එහෙනම් ඉතින් ලංකාවේ කිසි කෙනෙක් account එකක් නැත්නම් මොකද කරන්න ඕනේ? account class එක abstract කරන්න ඕනේ. අනාගතෙත් කාටවත් account හදන්න දෙන්න බෑ. අපි හදන්න දෙන්නේ මොනවද? Savings account, super savings account, current accounts, etc. Right? So no one is going to have account objects. Therefore, we are going to make actually mark account class as abstract class. Now you can see the practicality. Right? So I will ask another question. Right? So now we are talking about animals, dogs, cats, etc. So I will ask, have you seen a dog? You will say yes. Even our house is also having a dog. Have you seen a cat? Yes, there are cat instances in our house and our neighboring houses, etc. Then I will ask, are there any animal objects in your neighborhood? Right? ඔයාලා දැකලා තියෙනවද animal objects? මොකක්ද දෙන්න උත්තරේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ? ඔයා කියන ආවම ඊ animal කෙනෙක් දැක්කා. හරි ඔයා ඇත්තටම දැකලා තියෙන animal කෙනෙක් නෙමෙයි මොකෙද්ද? ඔයා දැකලා තියෙන බල්ලෙක්ව, පූසෙක්ව, කපුටෙක්ව තමයි දැකලා තියෙන්නේ. නැත්නම් අඩුම ගානේ හූනෙක්ව. හරි? හරි animals ලා ඔයා දකින්නේ නැහැ. හරි? animals කියන concept එකක් reality එක තමයි you have the dog, cats and whatever. So therefore we better make it abstract because no point, right? Just like make this abstract. So because in the reality you don't have the account object, you don't have the animal objects. හරි? ඔයගොල්ලෝ දැකලා තියෙන සමහරව කියන්නේ පැයට ගිහිල්ලා මහසෝන ගහලා අනම්මනම් හෝල්මන් වලට බලලා කියලා ඒ මොකද? ඔන්න animal class එකේ object දැකලා. මොකද එයාට මෙයාව පේන්නේ පූසෙක්ව දැක්කට බය වෙන්නේ නැහැ නේද? බල්ලෙක්ව දැක්කට බය වෙන්නේ නැහැ නේ. හැබැයි ඔයා හෝල්මන් වලට බය වෙනවා. ඇයි ඒ? හෝල්මන් කියන්නේ animal class එකේ object. හරි? ඒකන් තමයි හෝල්මන් වලට මිනිස්සු බය වෙන එක නවත්තන්න මොකද කරන්නේ? Animal class we are going to make it abstract because it doesn't have any specific things. It's just a concept. It's just a concept, right? So just like accounts, right? So you can see the concept of abstraction is very important. Otherwise you are violating the business logic. හරි? ඔයාගේ account class එක abstract නොකරොත් එහෙම system එකේ account object එකක් හදනොත් එහෙම අන්තිමට බැංකුවේ මැනේජර් ඇවිල්ලා හොයනවා කොහොමද යකෝ account object හැදුනේ කියලා. මෙච්චර කාලයකට අපේ account තියුන්නේ අපේ තිබුණ මෙච්චර කාලයකට savings account current account. මෙන්න මේ system එක account හදලා. එහෙම කරන්න බෑ. Right? So whole system is going to be collapse. Right? So what we have to do? Make animal abstract, make account abstract, right? So only those things are there for inheritance. Okay, right? You can see these things are very practical. Right? So because we have those things in the business world, the object-oriented concepts have provided those features, right? Provided those features. It doesn't mean that every class in the top of the hierarchy is going to be abstract. No, there can be you just start with some concrete classes, right? Okay, then we have a concept called of course if you have marker class as abstract, you can't create objects, right? So that is why I am getting error message here. I'm going to make it again non-abstract for the time being. Of course as a design we would have better make it abstract, but for the time being I'm just keeping it as it is because I want to demonstrate some more concepts. The next thing is abstract methods. Now remember final class, final method. Similarly abstract class, abstract method, right? So abstract method is a method having no body, right? Method having no body is called abstract method, right? For example, now my eat method is a not abstract method, it's a normal method, right? Why? I have the body, right? But if I write a method like this, void, right, something, right? But I don't have a body, just I have the semicolon. So in that case I have to mark this as a abstract. Now you can see this error message abstract. Yes, so that is fine, but there's another rule here. If your class now now without this class can be non-abstract, right? But there's a rule, if you have abstract method in your class, right, at least one abstract method in your class, your class must also be abstract. So that's another rule, right? So now I'm okay. My class is abstract. I can have abstract method. Now you can see I don't have body, right? Just the method signature semicolon. So this is the concept called abstract method. But remember, if you have abstract method, make sure that your class is also abstract. That means the rule is something like this. You can have a abstract class without abstract method, right? Your abstract class can have both abstract methods and non-abstract method, or no abstract method that also all, but still it's abstract class. But if you have at least one abstract method, you must make it abstract class, right? You must make it abstract class. Again, I will keep that for you to think, right? හරි මම you to think කියලා සමහර ඒවා තියෙනවා ඒක හිතනවත් දන්නේ නැහැ. Why that rule is there? So what is that rule? Why in object orientation, if you have at least one abstract method, why it force you to make your class abstract? So that is question one. Okay. So my question is, if a class has at least one abstract method, your class must be abstract. Why? So that's something you have to think. Okay. Something you have to think. Okay. So my next thing is uh, now if you have abstract method, and of course you have to make your class abstract. Now there is a rule, right? Now there's a rule. If you are if you have subclass abstract class and it has abstract method, all that subclass must implement all the abstract methods, so override all the abstract methods. So that is another rule. Now you can see my dog class is extended from animal class, which is abstract class. Now it gives me error. It says dog must either declared abstract or implement the abstract method something, right? So now it's again red. So either I have to make this abstract also, because you are extending from the abstract class animal which is having abstract method, or else of course you can make it non-abstract. But now if you want to make it non-abstract, you have to implement the all the abstract method in your superclasses. In my case, the abstract method is this one, void something, that you have to implement now. Right? If you implement it, yes, now you are done, right? Either you have to make this also abstract, or you have to implement the abstract method. So now I am going to say, because I don't want to make it abstract, dog do something. That do something is a very abstract concept, therefore we implemented it in the account class, so the animal class, but our dog class have implemented, therefore we don't have to declare it as abstract class, right? But right now there is no issue, but now we have some issues. Why? Because our abstract animal is abstract class. In here I can't still create animal objects, right? So that is so fine. I'm going to just comment this, and I'm going to just keep the animal as abstract class, right? Then this is fine. This is fine. So I just comment it. Now it's everything runs. And now of course my dog can do something also, right? My dog can do something because my dog has implemented that. So something method, something, right? So cat can't do that, right? Of course cat also has to do that, otherwise I'm going to get errors. You can see cat also having issues now. Why? Cat is also extended to animal. Now my cat must also override the this abstract method. So every class that is extended from the abstract class must either mark it as a abstract class, or it has to implement. It has to implement. Right? So otherwise you are going to get a. So you have to think about it. Why this kind of a restriction is there? So that is up to you, right? අපිට IT තියෙන්නේ, engineering තියෙන්නේ, හිතන්න කැමති අයට. හරි? හිතන්න කැමති අයට. නිර්මාණ කරන්න කැමති අයට ආර්ට් තියෙනවා. හරි? වැඩි හිතන්න නැතුව තියෙන සිස්ටම් එක ගන්නට rules වලට follow කරන්න ඕන අයට accounts තියෙනවා. account වල හිතලා වැඩක් කරනවද? නෑ. account වල හිතලා වැඩක් කරන්නේ account වල තියෙන rules වලට අනුව business එක දුවන්න ඕන. හරි? ඔයාලා හිතලිවල මේක debit කරන්න තු මම මොන හරි debit භාගයක් කරලා එහෙම කරන්න බෑ. හරි? account කරන කට්ටිය තියෙන rules ටික 100% follow කරගෙන ජීවත් වෙන කට්ටිය accounts කරන කට්ටිය හරි හිත අලුත් දේවල් නිර්මාණය කරන කට්ටිය ආර්ට් කරන කට්ටිය ඉංජිනේර්ස්ලා අලුත් දේවලුත් හදනවා හැබැයි purely logical විදියට හරි ඒගොල්ලෝ අලුත් දේවලුත් හදනවා හැබැයි අර logic එකෙන් එළියට යන්නත් බෑ හරි තියෙන දේවල් එහෙම කරන් ඉන්න ඕනෙත් නැහැ ඉංජිනේර්ස්ලා ඉන්නේ අලුත් දේවල් කරන්න අලුත් සිස්ටම් ඩෙවලොප් කරන්න right so I hope you got it right I just kept that I have kept you some questions now right right so why if a method is abstract why the class must be abstract if a abstract class has a method why the subclasses must implement so those are the things that you have to think okay right so all those things have definite answers right so if you first you think about those things right if you can't figure it out or you just come up with some answer then at least you can put it into the WhatsApp group or you can double check by doing a Google search then why abstract methods must be why subclasses must always implement abstract method right ඔහන්න ඕන නේ ඔයගොල්ලෝ දැකලා ඇති නේද බස් වල එහෙම යනකොට ඔයගොල්ලෝ දැකලා ඇතිය ඔය අවුරුදු 3 4 ළමයි හරි හැම තිස්සෙම අහනවා ඇයි අම්මේ මෙහෙම උනේ ඇයි අම්මේ මෙහෙම කළා තියෙන්නේ මේ බස් වල කවුළුවෙන් බය බල අහනවා හරි ඒක තොර තෝංචියක් නැතුව කියවනවා හරි අවුරුදු 4 3 4 ළමයි හරි ඇයි අම්මේ අර කර විදියට කරලා තියෙන්නේ බලන්න මේ ළමයි කොච්චර සුන්දරද කියලා හරි හැබැයි ඔය ළමයා යවනවා ඊට පස්සේ ඉස්කෝලේට යවනවා දහම් පාසලට යවනවා ළමයා මැරෙනවා ළමයාගේ කියුරියසිටි එක මැරෙනවා එදා ඉඳලා ළමයා ඇයි කියලා අහන්නේ නැහැ ගෙදර ඉඳලා ඇවිල්ලා අහන්නේ නැහැ ළමයා හොඳට බුම්මගෙන ඉන්නවා ගෙදර ඇවිල්ලා අම්මටත් මල වදියක් නැහැ කියලා අම්මලා හිතන්නේ අතටම අම්මා දන්නේ ළමයා මැරුණා කියලා ඉන්ටෙලෙක්චුවල් ළමයා මලා ඉස්කෝලේ යවලා හරි එදා ඉඳලා පොඩි එකා ප්‍රශ්න අහන්නේ ඇයි ඒ ඉස්කෝලේදී එක පැත්තකින් ටීචර් බය කරනවා අනිත් පැත්තෙන් හාමුදුරුවෝ එන බොන් කතාවක් කියලා කියනවා මේක එහෙම තමයි උනේ කියලා නේද එදා ඉඳලා පොඩි එකා මේකට වැඳගෙන කියන මගුලක් පිළිගන්නවා අර මිනිස්සයා මැරිලා දැන් ඉතින් ඕගොල්ලොත් එහෙම වෙන්න එපා මේක හොයන්න හරි මේක හොයන්න Google search එකක් දාලා හොයන්න එතකොට ඔයාගේ අර මිනිස්සයා ආයේ ඉන්ටෙලෙක්චුවල් මිනිස්සයා ආයෙ මතුවේ හරි දැන් ඕගොල්ලෝ ඉස්කෝලේ ගිහිල්ලා නැහැ සෑහෙන කාලයක් ඉස්කෝලේ ගියා කියන්නේ ආව ඉන්ටෙලෙක්චුවලි මරලා තියෙන්නේ දහම් පාසල් ගියා කියන්නේ හොඳටම මරලා තියෙන්නේ දහම් පාසල් ගියාම කියන බයිල අපි දන්නවනේ right so don't die like that so try to again get that intellectual person in you right critical thinking think about those things okay right so now we have discussed those things and I kept some things open to you then the use of this keyword and the super keywords right so the keyword called this and the keyword called super anyway we have discussed the use of this keyword right so this keyword is referring to the current instance right for example we already used this keyword when there is confusion it refers if you want to refer to the current instance variable you can use this keyword right so that is self-explanatory right even in a method then we have the keyword called super right keyword called super that refer to the parent classes right inherited classes the super keyword is used to refer to the parent or inherited classes actually I did a small change to this note I uploaded it today so get that only the chapter 11 download it again only the page 12 and 13 I did some changes right because I wanted to have some proper example for that anyway I will explain this say I am interested about super keyword right so I will explain because I have the dog class and everything right I will explain it like this so remember I have the dog class here right I have the dog class here and of course I have the animal class here right so assume that I want to refer to the so remember here I am calling the speak method right first I want to call the speak method of the superclass assume that I want to do that right speak method of the superclass when the speak method of the I'm in the dog class when the speak method of the dog class is called I want to first call the speak method of the animal class right then only that means when you are asked to speak like a dog what you are going to do is first you are going to speak like an animal then you are going to speak like a dog right? So then what I can do is, if I just call it speak again, it's not going to work, right? That means you are calling yourself, right? What I want to do is call the animal nature. What you can do is you can say super dot speak. So that means you are calling the super class speak method, then you are calling this class speak method, right? Of course the body of it. Now let's see whether it's happening. So that is only for dog, not for the cat, right? So let's have that. So anyway, we have called the speak method, right? අපි බලමු දැන් උතන animal එකක් type වෙනවද කියලා. So let's run it and see. So we are going to finish everything, right? Forever, you are going to have another learning session on object orientation if you follow this session, right? Nothing is going to be left. Right? Every bit and piece is going to be covered, right? So still it's getting run. Right, now let's see. Only the dog is having that behavior, right? So dog speak will first call the super classes speak, then only the dog is going to speak like a dog. ඉස්සෙල්ලා මෙයා සතෙක් වගේ පොඩ්ඩක් කතා කරලා ඊට පස්සේ only dog වගේ කතා කරන්න පටන් ගන්නවා. So let's see. Now you can see a dog created. Now we are calling the dog speak behavior because we are calling the super speak. Now you can see doggy animal sound, then only doggy the dog sound, right? So you can see, but when it comes to kitty, it is not the case. Kitty will just sound like a kitty, right? So there will not be any, you can see the kitty only has the animal sound anyway because the kitty don't have the over inversion, right? So if I just remove this, for the dog it is only going to have the dog sound only, not the animal sound, right? If I remove this, so you can do the experimentation by you. Okay, so that is one reason of using the super keyword, right? Again, uh, you can use super keyword if you have something like this. For example, let's say here the name by default is Annie. By default it is Annie, or let's say Anne, and assume that I am going to, this is not overriding, but dog is also going to have the same attribute with the same name. That can be happen. Very rarely we use, but can happen. But here we say DG, right? So the same name. This is not overriding basically because we override behaviors, but you can have the two classes in the class hierarchy can have the variables in the same name. But whenever now we refer to the name, what will happen is it will refer to this variable, not to the superclass variable, right? So if I want to specifically refer to the superclass variable, what you have to do is you have to refer to the super keyword, right? So uh, for example, I can say I have a method like this. Void my super name, there you are going to s out with name, and but we are going to print the super name. Animal ගෙන් වාට අපු නම මොකක්ද කියලා බලන්න. Name and the super name. So super name means basically super dot name, right? So this is your dog name, this is your animal name, right? Animal name means this property, right? Same name, right? Same name. Here also we have the name, but now your super name is going to be Ain, right? Ain. If you want to set it using super, you can set it, but those are very advanced concepts. Anyway, I'm going to cover everything. No gaps are going to be there, right? So now at the very end, I'm going to say d1 dot my super name. ඇතර නම් දෙකම යාගේ ඉන්න ඕනේ දැන් අන්තිමට. එක පැත්තකින් යාට සෙට් කරපු නම එන්න ඕන. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි මෙතන සෙට් කරන්නේ ඩොගීද මොකද්ද කියලා. හරි අනිත් පැත්තෙන් එන්න ඕන අර සුපර් නේම් එක AN කියන එක. හරි. මොකද අපි super.name කියලා රිෆර් කරලා තියෙනවා. So now let's see the output. Now you can see doggy, this AN from the, so I just put up a space plus some space. Right, so when I just say name, that is your subclass property, but if you want to specifically refer to your superclass property, because it's same name now, you have to say super dot, right, super dot. So once we do this, we are done with inheritance. Now you can see inheritance is not just saying that okay, you can just write it. So there are so many concepts related to that. If you want to really confidence about that, right? So this is you are referring to your subclass name. This is you are referring to superclass name. For that, of course, you have to use the super keyword. Okay, right? Then we have another concept called instance of. Instance of. So instance of is another keyword. It will check whether your object is an instance of this particular class, right? As I told you, now if you have something like animal and of course the dog. Now remember, when you create a dog object, your dog is a dog and of course your dog is animal. So that is all about polymorphism. Now polymorphism වලට එන්න හදන්නේ. So when you create a dog like dog d equal dog, your dog is a dog instance as well as dog is animal instance, right? So if you want to check which instances you are having, you can just use the instance of method. So now let's quick double check. I mean, වෙන වෙනම example දීලා තියෙනවා. මේ example එක ඔක්කොම ටික කරන්නේ. ඔයාලා වෙන වෙනම example දීලා තියෙන මේක තේරුම් ගන්න කැමති අය. හරි? තේරුම් ගන්න කැමති අය. So let's see S out. Now I am going to check whether D1 instance of, I am going to check whether it's an instance of animal, right? Animal. It has to say what? It has to say true. Why? My dog is a animal. My dog is animal. Then of course we are going to check whether my dog is a dog. Obviously, right? So my dog is going to be a dog. It has to say again true. Now let's run and see. එහෙම අපිට චෙක් කරන්න ඕනේ අපි දන්නවා. නමුත් ඔයාලා නිකමට හරි චෙක් කරන්න ඕන නම්. හරි වෙන framework එකකින් object එකක් නම් මට object එක වර්ගය බලන්න ඕන නම්. So it will always say true or false. Right? You can say true, right? Now let's see whether my D1 is an instance of cat. Obviously not a cat, right? D1 instance of cat. Now it's going to say what? No, this is not a cat, right? False. Right? Actually, I can't even write that code also, right? The incompatible type cannot cast dog to a cat, right? So you can see even I can't compile. So it has to be in runtime object. Actually, you can check whether this is another class also that I'm not going to cover. But anyway, this is okay, but this is not going to work, right? Because your D1 is not a cat, right? So I will come up with a better example later, like when you are doing the polymorphism. Still, we have not covered the polymorphism. Obviously, my D1 is not a cat, but my D1 is animal. My D1 is a dog. Okay, right. Right. So the next one is polymorphism. So I will just start polymorphism and I'm not going to continue polymorphism because I need to explain a lot of things again, like concept like interfaces, right? Interface කියන concept එක තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් ඔයාලට අන්තිම topic තියෙනවා flex development, UI development, හරි event driven programming, ඒවා එකක්වත් තේරෙන්නේ නැහැ. හරි interface තේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් ඒවා නිකන් බොරුවට බලාගෙන යන්න තමයි ඔයාලට වෙන්නේ එතකොට. හරි ඒවා නැතුව උඩට ගිහිල්ලා තේරුමකුත් නැහැ. ඔයාලට user interface එකක් එහෙම හදාගන්න බෑ Java වලින්. හරි. I will just explain what is meant by polymorphism, right? So I'm not going to continue with that. So polymorphism means, so far what we have discussed is abstraction, Encapsulation, inheritance. Now we are moving to the final topic, right? The topic that most of the students don't understand, right? ඒගොල්ලෝ එතන polymorphism කියන එක ගැන නිකන් සත පහක තේරුමක් නැහැ ගොඩක් අයට. So polymorphism means ability of an object to take its own form or any of its supertype form. So that is called polymorphism. So what is polymorphism? Ability of an object to take its own form or any of its supertype form. So definition එක බලමුට තේරි මාර ලේසියි කියලා. But this is a very serious concept. Okay. For example, uh, if I have dog, cat, and animal, so polymorphism says my dog is a dog object as well as my dog is animal object, right? My cat is a cat object as well as my cat is animal object. So that is all about polymorphism, right? That is all about polymorphism. That is a very strong, very important feature when it comes to frameworks, right? Reusability, right? So because of that, now remember, we think of this as a remote controller, this as the real object, okay? Now when you create a, right, when you create a object like this, animal a equal new animal, that means your object is also animal, your reference variable is also animal. But you, when you create a object like this, dog d equal new dog, your object is also a dog, your reference variable is also dog. Now we can see both are referring to the dog. Both are referring to the dog. Here both are referring to the animal, right? So animal a equal new animal. Of course we have the dog and cat, but we are not referring to a dog, but our object is also animal, our reference variable is also animal. That means our object is animal, your remote control is also animal. Here your object is also dog, your remote control is also dog, right? You have a remote control to control dog objects. But the interesting thing is, you can have something like this. That is where the polymorphism, the beauty of polymorphism comes. You can write something like this: animal, whatever the variable, equal new dog. Now what happens is, your object is a dog object, but your remote control is animal remote control. දැන් පොඩි අවුලක් තියෙනවා. dog object එකක් තියෙනවා, animal remote control එකක් තියෙනවා. animal remote control එකකින් මම මොනවද කරන්න පුළුවන් මේ dog ට, right? So that we are going to discuss when we are going to discuss the polymorphism. So you can see another half of the section is there. So that we will be discussing next time, how to do those things to promote the open close principle, how to use reusability in different scenarios. Like remember, intelligence is all about reusability. Polymorphism is all about reusability again, right? So remember, the very last I have given you some user interface string programming also. There you will be using the polymorphism, right? So here event handling, right? So there we will be using the polymorphism. මේ ඇලි ඉතාලම සිංහලෙන් ලියන්න පුළුවන් ඉතාලම පොඩි ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් එකක් මේ විදිහට. පොඩිම ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් එක. ඒක යාට මේ ඔක්කොම කන්සෙප්ට් පාවිච්චි කරලා තමයි කෝඩ් එක ලියන්නේ. නැත්නම් කෝඩ් එක තේරෙන්නේ, right? Anyway, we will be discussing the polymorphism and finish it off in the next session. So we will stop at this point. Okay, thank you.